Hello and happy April. I hope that if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you have been enjoying some wonderful spring weather. I know I have. It's been amazing to get outside after the long COVID winter. This week I wanted to touch on this subject that I hear a lot from people. And it's this belief that I'm not enough. This is a belief that is really pervasive in our culture. And there's a lot of comparison with social media for sure. But I think this belief predates social media. There's always been, I think, some version of comparison that we've done, but oftentimes the comparison is against some ideal version of ourselves that we are holding in our own minds. And it all revolves around this belief that I'm not enough. So I want to talk a bit about this because first of all, this comparison that we're doing, this comparing that we're doing is really unfair. We often compare ourselves, like our whole selves, to images on Instagram or Facebook. We see these curated lives and we see the greatest hits. We see the perfect yoga pose, we see the happy family, and somehow we think that this is how people's lives really are, that they're all living these perfect lives, and they don't suffer, or they don't suffer as much as I do, or they have it all together. And that this is common, and of course I'm not the first person to notice this or talk about it, but the fact that it's still going on, I feel it needs to be addressed. But then there's this ideal of ourselves, this ideal version of ourselves that we are often comparing ourselves to, this imagined ideal version that we often refer to. It's something that we're often working towards, being a better version of ourselves. And this is oftentimes, I think, is an interesting topic because there's this quest for self-improvement that a lot of people are on. And now, I'm a person who, you know, I self growth is not just my work, but it's my lifestyle. I've always been a person who was interested in growth and learning and in self discovery and in evolution. And so that's always been a part of my journey. And there's an aspect of it which we can call self improvement. And I would say there you could look at it as there are two different approaches to growth or self-improvement. I tend to want to look at this idea of self-improvement because it comes from a place of needing to improve, meaning not being good enough as I am, and so always striving to be better, but from a place of deficiency, of not enough, of inadequacy. So if we're constantly striving to improve ourselves, well, we're striving for this ideal, then we're really never going to get there. We're going to be on this endless journey leading us to frustration and disappointment ultimately, because we're never going to be perfect. So there's a trap in self-improvement, in reading constant self-help books, trying to feel better or trying to be better or make more money or whatever it is. There can be a trap in that. It can be its own hamster wheel. So how I prefer to look at this is, if you're actually, and this is how I try to help the people that I work with, it's more about self-acceptance first. Self-acceptance, self-love, self-compassion. And it's about seeing oneself as whole, because we are whole. There's no such thing as being not enough. It's impossible for us to be not enough. We are whole. We are whole beings with strengths and weaknesses. We all have flaws, we all have imperfections. Those things are not going to go away. We're actually not going to reach a place of perfection. It's not going to happen. So it's about making peace with those parts of ourselves that we consider weaknesses or flaws, making peace with them, embracing them when we can, accepting them, allowing them space for expression, and allowing them to be seen by others. And that is the part that I feel is the hardest part for most people is allowing that to be seen, allowing themselves to be vulnerable, and to let those sides of themselves out, and to trust that they'll be okay if they let that be seen. Like, this feeling of not enoughness comes from oftentimes, having that modeled to them by a parent. They had a parent who felt not enough and was always trying to compensate or hide certain parts of themselves or perform or what have you. Or they got the message from parents that they needed to behave a certain way in order to be loved or accepted. So, and that's oftentimes where this comes from, for sure. But again, it seems like it's passed down from generation to generation. So, how does one become accepting and loving of those parts of themselves? So there's a softening around them. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of, I'd say, punishing or disparaging attitudes towards those parts of themselves. So there's this harsh reaction to the flawed parts of ourselves, or that when that part of ourselves is needy or insecure, or makes some mistake, instead of being gentle and forgiving of that part of ourselves, we blame that part of ourselves, or we punish it, or we have some other kind of negative reaction to it. But if we can see that, we don't need to eliminate those parts of ourselves. They're not fatal flaws. They're they're just a part of the whole, a part of who we are. I mean, no one on planet Earth is without flaws, weaknesses, vulnerabilities. That's part of being human. So it's almost like we all have to learn to love being human. At some point, we got the message that it wasn't okay to be human, or that we should try to be different than human. We should try to be better than human. We should try to get out of this human conundrum. But we are human. We're human. And we're, as long as we're in these human bodies, we're going to be in the conundrum. We're going to be in that feeling sometimes completely confident and loved and safe and secure, and other times completely insecure and sometimes even terrified. And that's part of the experience. So rather than being angry at that part of yourself or ashamed of it, trying to hide it, if you let it be seen, that is often how it gets healed. Now, you can do this work yourself before it is seen by others. I mean, to let you know, a lot of times people are seeing it anyway, and you may think you're hiding it, but you're really not. You're being seen. You just may not feel seen, or may not know that you're being seen. So that's one part of it, is it's actually kind of hard to hide these things sometimes. But if you can start to have a gentler, more accepting, softer relationship with those parts of yourself that you don't like, it's going to make it easier to be vulnerable with other people, and trust that you'll be okay, and that people won't run away if they see that part of yourself. Now, if you've had the experience in your life where you felt like that part of yourself or those parts of yourself were unacceptable, were not lovable, then, it takes a little more effort to heal them. You've had negative experiences that reinforce the belief. But there's such a thing as a reparative experience, which is, seeking out people who are accepting, who don't judge you or criticize you, who do accept you for who you are, who can hold all of you. That is a very healing experience. So, just back to wholeness and humanness. I mean, ultimately, we are all whole. We're all human. We're all flawed. We all are imperfect. And we're all kind of just doing this life thing the best that we can. And, those of us who are committed to growing, we are, we're, we're on the journey of self-discovery. And that's a beautiful thing. And it doesn't have to be frightening to see parts of yourself that are less than ideal, that you see as needing a little tweaking. It's okay. It's just part of the whole process. So that's all I really wanted to talk about this week is just trying to see the all of yourself through a different lens, a loving, self-accepting lens. Because you are no less enough than any of those people on Instagram. You are no less enough than anybody in the world. We're all enough. We are all perfectly imperfect as we are. So, hope you have a wonderful week and enjoy all of your strengths and your imperfections this week. And I will see you next time.